Greetings to those of you who are watching this podcast. We welcome you. This podcast is being sponsored by USA Citizens Network, which is a small business-oriented group devoted to providing a medium or media, whether it be through editorials or through like this podcast, to present people of substance with real background, real knowledge, and real experience to talk on issues that are very important to us in our society today. But often the side that they're presenting or the perception that they have and the reasons they have them are not picked up by the main media. In fact, they're sometimes completely ignored. And we give them an opportunity to express their opinion. And with this podcast then will be made available to a number of people, whether it be in a formal session such as the Republican Party, or whether I just was at a meeting this morning in a medical office where one of the people said that she'd taken our last podcast and was showing it to every one of their friends, which leads me to say that usually where we focus is on medical independence. That's one of our areas that we want the public to hear about. We also focus on educational opportunities that are important, whether it be in the primary or K through 12, or whether it be in the universities. And that part's going to be tied into what we're talking about today. And we also focus on election integrity. Having said that, today we're going to do things a bit differently. We have Joe Fischott, who is the chairman of the Lehigh County Republican Committee. And the main parties that are going to be speaking are Dennis and Anna Atiyeh. And they're going to be speaking on the issue of transgender participation in sports, mainly, if I understand it correctly. But having said that, I will ask, before we really get into it, I want to first ask Dennis and Anna if they would so help the audience have some understanding of who they are and their background. So, do you want to go first, Anna?
Yeah, sure. So I'm married now, so actually Annalie Guidish, and I played sports from the time that I was in third grade. I played soccer and then jumped into volleyball in my early middle school years after already having done a whole bunch of clubs with volleyball as well. And I went on to then play both volleyball and soccer when I was in high school, and went on to be a Division I athlete at LaSalle University in Philadelphia, and really enjoyed being a student athlete. And I have so many siblings, 7 siblings, which my dad can share a little bit about, and pretty much all of them went on to play Division I sports as well. Wow,
that's a you say Division I?
Yes.
That's quite an athletic family.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you say you're married. Do you have children?
One in heaven.
Okay. Well, all right. That's a beautiful way to put it. Yeah. Dennis, let me ask you to tell the audience about yourself.
Thank you, Bob. I would tell you I'm blessed to have a beautiful daughter like this.
You are.
So blessed. But anyway, Bob, so I was a Division I football player at the University of Pittsburgh. Went to Allentown-Deriff High School where I wrestled, and won a Pennsylvania State Championship at the unlimited weight class. When I won, I wrestled the biggest man ever to wrestle in the state of Pennsylvania. He was 6'8", 368 pounds.
Ooh.
Great tribute. I know Joe. I really respect Joe, and I've become better friends with him. And I said, I knew I liked something about Joe, and Joe's a former wrestler out of Maryland, the chairman of the Republican Party. So what a wonderful guy. But I went on from there. I wrestled and played football at the University of Pittsburgh. Had Had a great, we're watching the Sugar Bowl coming up here. We watched it last week. And the Cotton Bowl, I played in the Cotton Bowl. I played in the Sugar Bowl, Fiesta Bowl. Had some real great teammates that I love dearly, and they're still good friends. I wrestled at the University of Pittsburgh. Also, I went on to wrestle in the '88 Olympics. And I'm very bothered. I'm very bothered right now by what's going on with this whole transgender competing. Males competing against females. And I talked with Joe, and I talked with my daughter and my daughters, and I said, we really have to explain how much sacrifice and how much commitment it takes to go from being a little girl and competing in sports as a little girl to then becoming a Division I athlete. And I hope Anna's going to articulate that today and explain that. And for her to make those sacrifices and work so hard, and my wife, God bless her, driving all over the country with her and flying all over the country with her to these different club meets and the like, to think that a biological male, could then just simply show up, who is so far more superior than these beautiful young ladies, and take their opportunity. I have a hard time sleeping over that, Bob and Joe. So I'd like for my daughter to explain the sacrifice that she went through to get there.
Dennis, thank you. Before we get there, let's let Joe, again, a lot of the people in this audience know who Joe is, but there's going to be people that don't. I've introduced him as the chairman of the Lehigh County Republican Committee. But Joe, tell the audience a bit about yourself as well.
As most would know, I've been the chairman for about 3 years now. 2021, I came in, and I'm also an airline pilot for a major airline. Served in the Air Force as a fighter pilot for 8 years, and then joined the airlines for the past 27 years now. I grew up in Tennessee. I went to the University of Tennessee. When I was in high school, I did wrestle. However, I was not nearly as successful as Dennis, and I did stay away from the 300-pounders. There's no way in heck I was going to be able to handle that. So I went to Tennessee initially as an engineer in the Air Force. I ended up changing that to a pilot, became a pilot, like I just said. When I got involved here in 2018 in politics and with the committee, and then, like I said, I got elected to chair in 2021. And one of our biggest issues at the time, before we had to deal with the transgender issues in the schools, was the school boards, and how we were losing control of our school boards and losing control of our schools to liberal causes. And whether it was financial reasons, curriculum, DEI and CRT, those are the big ones then. And then it just kept morphing into wokeism and what we now have with the problems with transgenderism in our schools locally. So that's where I was really concerned from the children having to put up with dealing with sharing a bathroom with another boy, with girls having at that age sharing a bathroom with a boy who could be 4 or 5 years older than these girls, which is significant at that age in a primary school or even in high school. And then, of course, when it came to the sports, the problems they were having with that, just again worrying about the sexual issues of having boys in the girls' locker rooms, changing with them, during these sporting events and things like that. It's bad enough. It's just beyond reproach and unacceptable. And then when, of course, talking to Anna and Dennis and learning more about the problems with Title IX and what's going on in the universities, that's when we decided, it's time that we get this, get our message out from a personal view. As you all know, it's been coming out quite a bit over the past year, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But I want to let them continue on with what they have, and I'll add in some further information as we go.
All right, and let me fail to introduce myself. My name is Bob Rust. I'm an attorney, and I'm part of as the USA Citizens Network Group, as is Art Cardos, who is the producer of this. And since we brought up wrestling in Tennessee, I'll put in my 2 bits. I went to undergraduate school to a small Episcopal school called the University of the South in Sewanee, Tennessee. Then I went to law school at Vanderbilt, Nashville. In intramural, Dennis, I went up against the guy who was a former Marine who outweighed me by 100 pounds. But I guess because I was so fast, that is scared, I was able to beat him. But that's the extent of my. Well, that's not quite true. I did some wrestling in high school too, but nothing compared to what you did. All right, that's the introduction. So, Anna, your dad wanted to start off with you to talk from a personal, direct experience at the female athlete about this issue and the problems that has caused you, the struggles it's caused you, and what you feel the people in the public really need to know about it. So with that, we'll go, and Joe will jump in as we move along.
Yeah, so I studied education at LaSalle. So I, spent time in the schools as a school teacher. I also coached volleyball. So since I've graduated, I've been very involved in paying attention to how this would impact both students in the schools and other student athletes that I have mentored. But when I started out as a young elementary student playing sports, it's tough. But the thing is when you're at that age, you're that young, there aren't that many differences in speed, in strength between female athletes and male athletes. When the real issues start to come in is when males hit puberty. You always say, oh yeah, girls are so much stronger than boys at those young ages. But once puberty hits, there's a real difference between the female athlete and the male athlete. The lung capacity becomes so much greater. Just the fact that males have that influence of testosterone on their body, they have a greater muscle growth and bone density. So me being alongside my brothers, I have 3 brothers who went on to play Division I sports, football and wrestling. I did very well, but I was nowhere advanced as my brothers in terms of strength, speed, and just their ability to jump. The differences on my volleyball net in high school was different than the net on a male team. So I ended up, going through different club sports when I was in high school, and then I went on to play Division I sports. But if I would have had a male on the team with me, males are my brothers. One of my brothers is 6'4", another brother is 6'1", 6 foot. You don't see that much height among female athletes as compared to your 6'9" basketball player. You don't see that among women. So I personally, I went through a lot, grueling summers in training and, having to be in the weight room lifting sports. I was one of the strongest girls on my team always, but that was nothing compared to my brothers who were also hitting the gym every week, every summer, preparing for sports. My brothers, I would never try to wrestle against one of my brothers. I would never try to outrun one of my brothers. And, we have the same genetics,
or play
volleyball against them. You've seen on a lot of high school teams where there is a male athlete competing against a female, that some of them are getting concussions. And getting hit in the head. I got kicked in the head by a volleyball player, by one of my friends when we were just doing stuff in a rec league, and I got a concussion from it. But none of that ever happened from a female athlete, getting hit. It's just, me as a female athlete, I know how much went into it. And I know that when I competed against males in any form, it would hurt. It would really hurt.
And honey, talk about the sacrifices you made and the clubs and the cost. I mean, the money that we spent, tens of thousands of dollars in clubs and traveling
Yeah.
to big events. Explain
Yeah,
that.
one of the things that like my dad and I have discussed is the sort of sacrifices that the average female has to make in order to get to the level of like Division I athlete. And it's, men, if they're not getting hormones at a very young age, they're having an advantage that like would almost outweigh the sort of the sort of sacrifices that a woman has to make in order to get to that level of athleticism. And that's why we have a separation between female and male sports, and women suffragists fought for these sort of rights for females.
So let me jump in. I was mistaken. You haven't actually had to go up against a transgender male, but you are speaking to something that maybe the public really needs to know about, and that is the sacrifice that you and probably your sisters have had to make to get to a Division I level in college. And what I am just surmising, but please correct me if I'm wrong. You would not feel you feel really cheated if you had to go up against a male on the other side of that volleyball net.
I would, and when it comes to the number of spots that are available for scholarships for women, there's an equal one for males. So if a male jumps in and takes a scholarship from a woman, that's one more woman who doesn't have that sort of money to help her get through her college career without a whole bunch of loans, and
that's an excellent point.
And just an opportunity to be out there on the court. But like I said, with my I know just from going up against my brothers who have, again, the same genetics as me, came from the same parents, like they outran me, they out hit a ball like against me. Like if one of my brothers was just like hitting a ball at me to practice, like it hurt 10 times worse than it would a female athlete. And I'm tough. Like I grew up with brothers, and like I don't want to tell my brothers that they're stronger than me, but like that's just the reality of it.
And baby, and Anna.
Joe, I see a question starting to frame in your mind. What is it?
Well, I was just thinking about one person who did have an issue dealing with this and is very vocal now, and that's Riley Gaines. And I'm sure you should reach out to her if you haven't already, and join her organization, which is making a lot of headway these days. Riley was swimming for the University of Kentucky, and then they had a male who was a very subpar swimmer on the men's team, who then just decided he's going to be a female and just starts swimming on the women's team and breaks every record. And here's women, like you were just saying, who spent their entire life training and sacrificing through middle school and high school, like Dennis has said, driving them to these meets in the wintertime where it wasn't always an indoor pool. I remember doing that with my little kids in Maryland when they're waiting for the spring to hit, and then they got to freeze their tails off in that water. And then you have this guy who just mediocre swimmer get in the pool and just take away.
Like 280. I have followed it. I think it was like 280 in like men's swimming.
Yeah, exactly. He was so low in the rankings, and now here he is at the top. That knocks the ladies out of titles. It knocks up, which means they lose scholarships, they lose financial success in going on to the Olympics, which Dennis affects their financial being in the future for their careers. I mean, that's lawsuits right there. If you can't, if there's not another way to go other than through the legislation, so there's a financial part of it, but there's multiple parts, like you already mentioned too, with safety. You brought up the volleyball. They have an example of of a college volleyball girl. I don't think she ever played volleyball again, right? I mean, with that concussion she took, I don't know, but I mean, it was extremely bad, and because it was a male spikes the ball right in her face and knocks her out cold. That's safe. Those are things that the NCAA should be concerned about. Just practical, normal, common sense things. There's a reason why men are not playing in physical sports, together like that. And the last thing is dignity and respect for women. Whatever happened to? We spent all these years giving women. Finally getting the right to vote, getting the right to get into the workplace, breaking the glass ceiling, becoming the first congresswoman or first senator, running for president. And now you're denying all that women don't even exist as a gender, is just an abomination to our order and God's order. So,
absolutely, and that, Joe, all great points. That's the biggest problem that I believe we have is the NCAA. Mm-hmm. Since the Biden administration has come in, we have Title IX that has been violated just repeatedly. And
Dennis, excuse me interrupting. A lot of people in the audience might know. What does Title IX mean?
Okay. So Title IX in 1972 was passed for the reasons what Joe was just talking about. It was a great earmark for women. It was passed that women would have to get equal scholarships to men in the NCAA. So Bob, what would happen is if you gave 100 football scholarships, you had to give 100 females scholarships in the same manner. If you gave 10 basketball scholarships, you'd have to give 10 females scholarships at the same time. So that's what Title IX brought to the table, which was huge for women's sports.
Sports,
huge,
but it also covers other issues as well, like rights in the classroom for women who might find themselves pregnant. They can't be discriminated against for needing to go to certain doctor's appointments and stuff. So it goes across the board just for women's rights to.
So it was a good thing, right?
It was really
wonderful.
good. It was really
wonderful.
Right. Okay. So what's happened to it? What under the Biden administration, Dennis?
Well, it's exactly what Joe just said. It's chaos. I mean, for them to let males now come and take those scholarships and those athletic opportunities from women is a crime. It's so sad.
What would you do about it? What would you propose the public should do about it?
What should absolutely happen immediately, and President Trump and McCormick, the whole Republican ticket ran on this issue. We're going to stop males from competing against females. So what needs to happen is it's the NCAA who needs to be straightened out. They're supposed to be a non-for-profit governing body that uses, education and sciences and facts to make policy for the best interest of women and men in athletics. And for them to permit males to compete against females with no proven science, with no proven facts, is so outrageous. Just like Joe said, it's a crime. They should be prosecuted for committing crimes against these young ladies. And I believe, and here's what I believe needs to be done. These guys that are running the NCAA are like a joke. I mean, since Biden's in office, it seems like our whole country fell apart. The NCAA as an institution was such a beautiful institution, and it seemed as though they were doing a pretty decent job. This act of just letting males come in and take females' academic accolades, athletic accolades, there needs to be a congressional investigation into it, and the NCAA needs to be overhauled because of not just this, but since I'm on the subject, okay, to let professional athletes compete against amateur athletes in football and basketball and now wrestling, that's so pathetic. I mean, there's guys making $1 million to play football or to play basketball or to even wrestle now, going against guys that aren't making a penny. So that is such a violation of amateur athletics. And Joe and I had this conversation, and Joe took it one step further and said they need to straighten out the Olympic Committee, which bravo. But what I think needs to happen, Attorney Russ, is the powers that be, whoever that is, needs to get a hold of the NCAA. They're falling apart. I mean, it's like a comedy as to what is happening today in the collegiate environment. And then just one other thing, to let these football players play 17 games. Oh my God. I mean, look, every time you get on the football field, which I've been on, you can get turf toe, right, Joe? Right, Bob? You can get a turf toe or you can get a concussion. Every single play. Now they're going to have these young athletes who are supposed to be there to get an education. They got them banging their heads and going at it for 6 more games. And that's absurd. And you know who's benefiting? NBC, ABC, CBS, ESPN, and Fox. They're all benefiting from these young athletes risking their entire careers for what? For what? You know, to have the opportunity to play in the NFL, great. When you get paid, go to the NFL. So there's so many other issues that I'd like to take a couple of minutes after we cover the women's. But I got off on a stir there, and I'm gonna stop there. And if you men want to make some comments, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll jump in. And you didn't mention that the bookies too that are making money off
the gambling. Oh my God, the gambling. Listen, Joe, I'm
sorry to get extending the same topic, but I just got us going.
Let's talk about that, because who benefits from the gambling now? Here's what's crazy. ESPN is taking bets on college football, and we got our kids watching these games, and it's like, oh my God. So now what they have too is they like, if there's a penalty, they tell the guy's number, right? So my wife went online, the college football players are getting harassed by the students and by individuals who might have bet on the game. Uh-huh. They're screaming and making fools of these guys who might not have fulfilled the game spread or the different propositions on a game. So besides being exposed to 6 more opportunities to be injured, playing 17 college football games, these young athletes are being exploited by the NCAA and by these television stations, because you know why? Those television stations are ready to go broke. Their programming stinks. And now what they're doing is they're exploiting college athletes to stay alive.
Let me jump in, Dennis. Let me jump in. I think you've really, both of you, put a very important point up, just in this one alone. I, as a fan, celebrated the fact that we extended the college season because I enjoy it so much, not even thinking about what hazards we're putting those players up against in terms of injury, serious injury, in terms of their potential to go to the NFL. So just me as a citizen, I thank you for raising that point. I can tell you one other thing too that I have some experience with. We've opened up a Pandora's box by allowing betting. It's going to hit society and knock us down in ways that we can't even think about now, because I've seen it happen from the South. I've seen it happen with the gambling showboats on the Mississippi River and the like, and what it's done to working families. Enough of that. I'm not supposed to be here to be talking. All right. Joe, what else would you have Dennis talk about?
I wanted to go back to what we could do with concerning Title IX, and whether it's the NCAA or some other ways. This year, obviously, we had a really big election, and everybody was focused on the election. But there was a lot of good pushback from the conservatives on on Title IX, and Biden's radical attempted to change Title IX on their own. And I think there was 26 states. It was led by the Texas Attorney General Paxton, and they were able to get the Supreme Court to deny the. Actually, it all started with in April of 2024 with it was America First Legal. I work a lot with the America First team. They have a legal department. They have a works department that does political stuff, and then they have a legal department that's doing amazing things on all different fronts. And one of them was on this. And so in April 2024, they, along with the Texas Attorney General, they were able to secure a preliminary injunction on Biden making those changes to Title IX. Well, then later in August, it went to the Supreme Court because the Biden administration was trying to force them to be able to overturn that. And the Supreme Court ruled against the Biden administration. So on a 5-4 vote, that they did not be able to make those changes to Title IX. So that's a big win for us, all the way to the Supreme Court. Now, it could still be heard because that was like an emergency stay and it kept it in place. So they still have to resolve it. And this is now our opportunity. So we went through the courts to get that stopped. But now, obviously, we need to fight it, not just in the courts, but with our congressmen and our senators, like you were just talking about, Dennis. And, of course, now with President Trump coming in, we must make sure his administration keeps Title IX as it was supposed to be for women, which I totally confident that he's going to do that. But then we need to reinforce that in the NCAA, say, no, this is what Title IX stands for. It has nothing to do with transgenderism and men playing in women's sports. And that needs to be enforced. So now we have to make sure that whatever the enforcement department is, that continues down the chain, not just through the universities, which the problem is a lot of the states obviously control the universities, not the federal government. The schools locally are controlled by the states or the local administrations. So the federal government might not have a lot of control at the lower levels. So we need to obviously either do it legally or through our state representatives here in Pennsylvania in order to force them at each university. That's going to be the hard part, Ed. And it's going to take advocates like Anna and yourself, like Riley Gaines. We have to continue to make ourselves present, and because now Congress people are coming on. The Congresswoman from South Carolina, she was on Riley Gaines' Twitter, being interviewed on her podcast, and as she's talking about how there's no way she would be where she was if it wasn't for women's advancement, and we cannot be going backwards. So we need to engage them. Now, how? That's the questions we need to figure out. How do we engage the NCAA? How do we, target the universities and get them to make the changes? Is it going to have to be a state-to-state thing? So that's the dilemma. That's what we're working at. And for me, at a local level, I'm so grateful that Attorney General Dave Sunday was elected this year for us in Pennsylvania, because he will have the ability to at least stop anything that the radical left tries to push down onto our schools. And so, because in New Jersey, if you're aware, the governor is a Democrat, the Attorney General is a Democrat, and they actually file lawsuits against conservative school boards that don't allow men in women's sports or men in women's bathrooms, and they attack these school boards. And these are just individuals that don't get paid. So thank God we have somebody like Dave Sunday can help stop that. So that would be a good place for us to go. Reach out to our Attorney General and make sure that none of that ever comes down on our school boards. But then at the same time, we need to make sure our school boards start enforcing the correct policies. And that's where I could definitely use some help. On the local level, I can use your help on that. So,
well, I would tell you, my daughter Anna got some numbers here, and I'd like for her to quick share them with you about how far out this is. I mean, go ahead, Anna, give them those numbers.
Well, you have 60 million youth that are involved in sports right
60
now.
60 million a year.
So,
How many? Say again.
60 million youth are involved in
Okay.
sports right now.
Okay.
Nationwide. And that's according to who?
It was a national youth sports association that put out these numbers.
So let's say 40% of them are females. Okay, 40% of them are females across the country now, and let's say it was just Christmas, so let's use the number 25. So let's say 25 million young ladies, girls, are being affected possibly by males coming into their locker rooms and changing and then even competing to them. That's youth. That's high school, middle school athletics, right? So here's where we need to really make the connection, because Joe and I talked about this, and Joe brought this point up to me last week before Christmas. You know, it's got to. Those 25 million children have parents. So literally, there's 50 million. Let's say they have one parent, but most of them. There's over 50 million people in America being affected by these males changing in the girls' locker rooms potentially, and competing against these girls, even through the high school ranks. So what do we need to do? Joe made it real clear. We need to either file a lot of lawsuits, against whoever is trying to institute these types of absurd policies. The second thing I believe we need to do is we need to get a congressional investigation. Let me tell you guys something. The guys that run the NCAA, my daughter does some research. The guy made $4 million last year. This is supposed to be a not-for-profit, the NCAA. He made $4 million in a year. Now, if you look through their their whole administration and their governing body, it needs to be overhauled. And that's something that nobody monitors them. So either we need to get a congressional investigation into what in God's name is going on with the NCAA, and what type of it needs to be revamped, it needs to be overhauled, and there needs to be some major changes, because I'll tell you, the Biden administration is a total failure for our daughters and for these young athletes that are being abused and being gambled on openly by ESPN and for their profits. So something's got to get done, and I mean extremely. And I will be happy in any way, shape, or form to offer my expertise, and I have a deep expertise in this field, to lead them in the right direction. But the NCAA has failed not just the young ladies and Title IX, but they've also failed the young athletes who are going and competing. A guy's making $1 million. A guy's making $1 million, and he's competing against a guy who's an 18-year-old who's not making anything. So this guy that got the $1 million, he's got the personal trainer. He's getting the best vitamins. He's got a personal doctor. He's got all these advantages. And like Joe and I, we talked about last before Christmas, Joe. It's the Olympic thing too. So, but that's another day. But the NCAA really needs to be investigated, and their policies and procedures on how they're handling Title IX and how they're handling this whole integration of pros playing against amateurs and 17 games of football that take kids away from the classroom, expose kids to concussions and major injuries, and we don't know the ramifications. of what their future is by these extra 6 games that are being added in some sort of wild playoff. These kids aren't pros. They're amateurs. They're supposed to be getting an education, not playing morning, noon, and night and competing at a crazy level. And listen, I've been there. They're all using drugs to mask the pain and to enhance their performance because they're young kids. They're out of their minds. They want to be a star. They want to be seen on television. So the NCAA is totally abusing the females' Title IX rights, along with these young men who go in to get an education and are just being totally exploited. So I believe there needs to be a congressional investigation, and the NCAA needs to be overhauled. That's what I believe needs to happen.
Well, and so the route to do that, in order, I assume we can contact our congressmen or senators to do that. Maybe there's an organization out there that we need to hook up with that can get that message exactly what we were saying for the congressional investigation. Get it serious, get it going. I know the Prager University, if you guys ever heard of PragerU with Dennis Prager, they have a petition going around called Save Women's Sports. Riley Gaines has it on her. She's advertising that too. Finding an organization like maybe PragerU that has that reputation in public that can get this investigation started. We need to bring in other groups to put the pressure on Congress, just like you're saying. It seems like if you just call up your congressman, and that's just not going to cut it. It really has to be out in the airwaves. And so I suggest we start connecting with these other organizations.
And I might jump in there, Joe, and say that I would go to Ryan McKenzie. I'd go to our new Republican senator and say, please have a leading staff member take a look at this podcast and take it from what you're going to learn from that podcast and bring something to the table for these young athletes. I mean, that's another thing. That's why we have these podcasts. We want to influence not just senators and representatives, but people that will vote for those folks. We're well over our normal time. Let me just ask both Anna and Dennis, and also you, Joe, if there's anything the one thing you hope that the people that are listening to this take away. What's the one thing?
I would say I love everyone. Like, I want just opportunities to remain in place for women athletes, for women to be safe in locker rooms. I didn't spend much time talking about that. My dad brought it up. But this isn't about any lack of love, but actually, in fact, a deep love, especially for, the fellow ladies who I know worked very hard and who are working very hard, and just athletes who I've helped train, that they're not, put in very difficult situations.
Thank you. Dennis?
I would say the NCAA has failed women and has failed men athletes also, and that if you really take a hard look at them, they are just a bunch of, they remind me of the Biden administration. Sleepy Joe must have a cousin or brother working in the NCAA, and the guy's making $4 million a year on top of that. So from my perspective, somebody needs to really, really get on the NCAA. I have somebody who I deal with who has a strong contact with Trump, and I'm gonna hope that they watch this podcast and really wake up, because what's going on with these young ladies and young men needs to stop now.
Very good. Joe?
And my statement would be one word is truth. We need to start telling the truth. And that's where we've lost our control over our society, when we start making up total falsehoods of what we are as human beings. And when you have somebody like Richard Dawkins is a proclaimed atheist. He's part of an atheist found organization, and that's all fine. You can believe whatever you think you want to believe. But he just resigned from this atheist foundation because they unpublished his report about the truth that there's only two genders. There's no transgender. There's only a male and a female. And the atheist organization kicked the atheist out because he told the truth. So there are people out there that might not fit our Christian beliefs that still know the truth. And we need to stick to that as Christians, as in the Jewish community, Muslims, any God-fearing person who knows the truth. But there's other people who don't even fit our one God principle in truth that actually believe it as well. So we need to reach out to them. We need to bring this together with many people and put an end to this. This has been a terrible experiment, just like they've done experiments back in the old days, prior to World War II and all that on people. This is the same thing, but they're doing it in public, and we're looking a blind eye. So may we all be able to proclaim the truth in this, and it's not just a Christian principle. So
right.
I'll leave it.
Well done, all three of you. That's great, and I thank you for what you've just done, and I hope that the people that are listening are going to not only listen, they're going to really digest this and find a way that they can respond to the call that you all have made. And whether that be with their congressman or whether their senator or whether it be their pastor, whatever it may be, bring this podcast to the extent that they can to others so they can learn. And so with that, I'm going to conclude our program, again, with thanks to all of you.